Welcome to Tax Step Live. This is Carlos and Andrew Samaniego. Now, picture this. You're in a room, ringing constantly, everybody talking, nobody listening, and they're not selling a product. They're selling a feeling. You say yes, they hang up, and then dial the next number. They've already forgotten your name. Most of the tax relief industry is that exact room. And the promise tonight, we're going to show you how to spot it before it costs you tens of thousands of dollars and possibly months, if not years of your time in dealing with your tax problems. But you know what I want you to do? Before we go there, I don't want you to imagine this. I'm going to share with you exactly what it looks like via a movie called Boiler Room.
Classic.
Well, look, I understand, doctor. We're going to come back to you in 1 month with one idea and one idea only. If you like what we have to say, great. We'll do business. If not, worst case, we're going to part as friends. That's fair, right? What? So, Doc, are you working with $1 million in the market right now? What's this again? Tell me something. You're a doctor. Have you ever heard of a drug called Benadryl? It's manufactured by MSC Pharmaceutical.
No.
Okay, listen, it's in the third stage of FDA approval, all right? Word is approved within the next 3 months. And it could be more for all I know. But I'm getting... Okay, so his name's Dr. Jacobson. I'd say from the sound of it, he's definitely...
I don't want to hear it, kid.
Okay.
Hi, Dr. Jacobs. This is Chris Marlin over at JT Marlin.
Marlin, he's my father. He's my mother.
So my associate tells me you're interested in one of our stocks.
What a classic movie.
What you just saw there is exactly what I described, and it's what our tax resolution industry has turned into. When Andrew became an enrolled agent, I told him, I said, one of the challenges about our industry is that it has those types of people that run in this world, right, Drew?
Yeah, that's right. And another good reference to what this is like is Wolf on Wall Street. For those who haven't seen that movie back in the day, Wolf on Wall Street's a good representation of what it's like now. People are selling you up front like that.
And the reason I share that with you is because this last week, Drew, I've had multiple people come into my office, people with $1 million tax debt, one with just over $250,000 tax debt, and a couple more with over $100,000 tax debt. And every one of those people, Drew, that came to the office they all told me the same thing, that they called multiple people on the phone, ads they heard, TV ads they seen, and they said they got the actual word, one specific person said they got an icky feeling from what was happening. So basically they pour out their story. They tell them what's going on in their lives, the levy that they got, the sleepless nights. And they said that it literally felt as though they were just trying to close them, that they weren't really listening to their problem. And that's what me and Andrew want to talk to you about today, about the ability of being able to not only that scene that you saw here, when we go back and look at these scenes, these are all salespeople. Their only job is to close a sale. That's it. And a lot of people in this industry that we deal with, especially the larger brand names out there, they're very similar. They have a lot of salespeople. They're trying to close you, trying to tell you that maybe you qualify for something that you really don't qualify for. And in our industry, you have to be legally licensed to do our type of work. And Andrew, explain to them the 3 specific licenses that you have to legally represent somebody with a tax problem.
Yeah. So to legally represent you, obviously a lawyer can represent you in any case, right? Whether it's criminal or whether it's one of these type of cases. Another one is obviously, if you've heard of a CPA, a certified public accountant, they are licensed by their state board. And then the lesser known of the 3 is the enrolled agent, which are federally licensed throughout all 50 states and territories.
So those are the 3 legal people that can legally represent you. So if they're the only ones that can legally represent you, right, Drew? Shouldn't it be obvious that that's the person that you should be speaking to at least get a sense of it, can this person really help my specific situation? And I don't know about you, Andrew. There's been multiple times I've told people that we've called, that we've did our initial tax debt kind of consultation to see where they're at in their tax problems, where I've told them, you really don't need my help.
Yes.
Here's the situation that you're in. Here's a phone number you can call to resolve it, because our job is to help our clients, not to take advantage of our clients.
Absolutely. It has to deal with intent. And obviously for a salesperson, their intent is to make their quota. I have a brother-in-law who always talks about he's a salesperson and his job is to make, whereas our job is to help the people who we can or can't help. And yeah, like you, I have many people who have called me and I listen to their situation and I say, this can be done with a simple phone call. This is what you need to say. Or I come to people and say, hey, you actually really need help. And it all has to deal about intent.
Yeah, and if you notice in that scene from Boiler Room, you know what? They're reading a script, and a
Mhm.
lot of times they have their script set up. So when you say, "Well, I can't afford it," or "I can't," they know exactly how to respond. And here's the thing: here's the power of being able to meet somebody in person. I have the ability. You know what? I tell people all the time: if you want to come into my office, we're a live business. You can come down. You can meet with us. Andrew has an office in Monterey, California. If you want to meet with Andrew live, he has the ability to meet with you. But that doesn't mean you have to meet with them live. But what I highly recommend, if you can't meet with them live, at least get on a Zoom call with them. Since COVID, Andrew, pretty much every business has the ability to get on Zoom. It was almost a requirement during the COVID years. But now, at least doing a Zoom call so you can see that person kind of eye to eye. It's much harder for somebody to be reading a script and have a script answers when you're talking to more, not even talking, but having a kind of a conversation with them about your specific situation, about how they're thinking about how they're going to resolve your challenges.
Yeah, it's also a nice thing to know that the person who you talk to the very first time is going to be the person who ends your case. And we didn't go through the full video of that clip, but first he talks to the initial salesperson, then he says Rocco, and then the senior salesperson comes in to close him, and then they actually transfer them to an account manager who is going to actually take the money in an account, and then again the sales happens. That was the sales portion, and then the operations happens in the later end. But with small firms like ours, like you deal with the first person, and then that person's handling your case and going to finish out the outcome.
Exactly. In that situation, as Andrew said, you had that initial opener, the
Mhm.
closer, and then the administrative person. Obviously, in that movie, they're selling stocks, but
Right.
you kind of get the idea. In our industry, you know what? You see the ads, there's a phone number, you call them, you get that closer that gets on the phone, and then they will tell you this. You know what? I'm not the person that's going to be representing you in the case. That's going to be our team, our resolution team. And they'll say our CPAs, EAs, attorneys, whatever it might be. They will tell you that specifically. But the problem is that they typically don't tell you the name of that person. It's typically a team. You will get team member, team A or team
Yeah.
B that's handling your case. And I've had multiple cases where people have come to me after being in that cycle for years and paying tens of thousands of dollars and not really knowing who's actually legally representing them in front of the IRS or the California Franchise Tax Board. When you're dealing kind of what Andrew said with a firm that actually it's their responsibility to deal with that. You have your specific enrolled agent, CPA, attorney dealing with dealing with your file. You stop becoming a file. You start becoming a
Mhm.
person that we care about. We care about to try to get them out of the bad situation that they're in. And that's not something that you can fake at scale. It's just the power of having an individual like ourselves, Andrew or myself, working on your case. There's a big dramatic difference and you can feel it right away.
Mhm. Absolutely. And so again, if you were to call one of us, like it would be our signature on your power of attorney, and it's our responsibility. And with those big shots with salespeople and account managers and all that, it's hard to pinpoint who's actually responsible for your case. And what they'll do is they'll push it, and then you'll get multiple emails saying, we'll send this to your account advisor or your person working on your case. And most likely that person who's actually working your case won't even contact you. They'll have somebody else contact you. And so,
Yeah, and I'm glad you
yeah,
brought that up, Andrew, because that person that you're talking to that's selling you their services, they can't legally represent you. They can't call the IRS on your behalf. They can't sign a power of attorney. And like I said, as Andrew said earlier, there's only 3 types of individuals that can do that. So the most important conversation about your tax, so the one where you got to talk to that person who's going to be having that legal authority to represent you. And I think that's what we're getting at, is just, you got to be careful, be dramatically careful on who you hire, because they are actually become legally responsible for that communication with the IRS or the California Franchise Tax Board.
Yes.
And Andrew, I talked about this, and I remember you laughing because I actually gave these companies that sell, and the big thing that's being sold right now is offering compromises with a lot of the larger firms.
Yeah, absolutely. And
What
what's the name that you ended up giving these people?
the promise thief.
The promise.
They promise you that they're going to be able to settle your debt for pennies on the dollar. So I literally, it's a villain in our tax underworld universe. I call them the promise thief, because they literally, they sell you the rescue, they take the money, and they literally disappear after they've taken your money. And that's where the boiler room, this boiler room that we just showed you here a few seconds ago, this room, and it's the promise. This
Going for
room
it, Dr.
here,
Jacob. We're talking
that
very
big
high
promise that
volume.
they're making, they're making big promises on large investments, on stock investments. The promises that you're getting from the promise thief in the tax underworld is the promise that they're going to be able to settle your debt for pennies on the dollar, and that you qualify, even though in a typical 10 to 15, 20-minute conversation with either Andrew or myself, we can give you a good idea whether that avenue of settling your debt is even a possibility. We can't, there's never any guarantees, but we can at least let you know, are you wasting your time or not? And I'll give a perfect example, Andrew, right? And I talked about this. I literally had somebody that hired 3 different companies, 3 different promise thieves. Each one of them told him that he qualified for an offer and compromise. And that's the ability to negotiate your debt for a smaller amount than what you actually owe. First company pretty much took his money. Second company took his money, disappeared. And actually, there's a common theme. They disappeared on him. The third company he hired, and in this process, he had already spent $40,000 hiring different firms.
Wow.
On that third company, they hadn't disappeared, but they weren't answering his phone calls, and all the paperwork had been submitted. And he actually reached out to me to see if I would be willing to at least take a look at his case, because he did not want to believe that he just got robbed a third time, in that sense.
Yeah.
And I sat there and I'm looking at the paperwork he submitted to the IRS for an offer and compromise, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, this guy does not qualify for an offer. His tax debt was large, but the problem was his equity in his house was 3 times that amount of money that he had there. And if you're in our world and we know what we're doing, I could see right away that you're not getting an offer and compromise. And it's a physical impossibility.
Yeah, that's information that you can find out just with the initial phone call. It's not even something that we need to dig into.
Yeah, that's a free phone call. That's a free phone call, Andrew or myself. It's a call to say, hey, here's our situation. This is what we owe. Here's what's going on. What do you think is possible? What avenues, what do you think the strategy would be to resolving this tax debt? And guess what? We do that at no cost. All you got to do is book an appointment. You book an appointment, and you can find our details down here in the comments. You can find our details, book an appointment, no cost to you, and potentially save you, as I started this conversation, hundreds of thousands of dollars in penalties and interest over time, because it just keeps on accumulating because nothing's getting resolved. It potentially reduces the ability of you spending money on one of these types of companies that are out to get you. Now, am I saying that every one of the companies out there are that way? Absolutely not. There's a lot of legal, legitimate, me and Andrew have a lot of colleagues in this industry that are really good at what they do. But guess what? They're not these people that are running these big
$1 billion advertisements across the nation.
Exactly. So I'm going to get off. Andrew, I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about, and I think we talked about it last week, if I remember right, Carlos Mencia.
Oh, yes, the comedian.
Carlos Mencia believe it or not, I thought he was very well known. I think maybe he's more well known on the West Coast, but he made $8 million over 3 years. But he had 3 years of tax returns. Was it 3 years or 6 years? I almost forgot the story, but he didn't file multiples of tax returns. It's been since last week, and I totally forgot. In essence, here's where I kind of talk about this. California has a new unit completely, new brand new unit. It's called the business fraud unit. And what they're doing is they're literally going after people who, specifically people that unfiled tax returns, not paying their taxes, and looking for fraud. And basically the big story with Carlos Mencia, big time comedian, made $8 million over 3 years, 3 years, decided not to file his tax returns, his business or personal tax returns. And California says enough is enough, and literally arrested him. Hasn't been convicted. I want to make that no. He did plead not guilty to these charges, but he was arrested. And California basically says they're going to stop. They're not going to mess around with people no more. And what I want you to guys understand from this story, you may not be a big time comedian, but California says if you're a business owner and you're not filing your tax returns, watch out that they're coming, that Carlos Mencia was the first, and they're looking for people that aren't filing their taxes and just ignoring their tax responsibilities.
Yeah, and usually California is a lot faster than the IRS works. So that's something you really should take in mind when dealing with California businesses, or if you have a personal entity in California.
Yeah, and I'll give you an example. Just a few people that I recently have been working with. Recently, I have a client that had 6 years of unfiled S-corp returns, unfiled personal returns. In fact, he started working with me about a year ago, and we just got his case resolved this last week. Got him into a very affordable installment agreement, got all his tax returns filed. And I remember when he came into my office, he specifically stated when that first call, I'm just afraid of going to jail. That was his he specifically said that. Now, I know on the IRS's side that it's rare that the IRS is going to put you in jail for not filing, but they have the right to do that. I believe it's a 1-year penalty per unfiled tax return that they can actually put you in jail for. But the IRS has specifically stated they like to make examples of people, high celebrities, things like that. What's that?
It's probably like a paperwork thing. It's probably a lot of paperwork to put you in jail, and they want to try to avoid that. So.
And I say that to say this: California basically says, no, we're going to put people in jail for not taking care of their tax responsibilities. So, and when he heard the story, I had told him a story about Carlos Mencia, the comedian. I had told him that story, and he's like, oh my God, because he realized he was that person. So if you're an insurance agent, a real estate broker, real estate agent, a small business owner, a contractor, and you started an S-corp and an or an LLC, and you've been operating the business, running money through this business, and haven't filed your tax returns, you should take a deep breath and be nervous. One of the smartest things you could possibly do right now is contact us, contact Andrew, contact myself to say, what do I need to do to get this resolved? You can no longer put your kind of head, what's the word that put your head?
Bury your head in the sand. Yes.
And it was funny, Andrew, kind of a little off topic or on topic. I was telling Andrew, I actually went to go see Fluffy, the comedian, Gabriel Iglesias, here at the local Indian casino in San Bernardino. And it was great because at the end of his his comedy session, he decided to ask questions to the audience and just answer any questions that we were willing to answer. And he was going section by section. And of course, I screamed, what do you think of Carlos Mencia? And he's like, who? He goes, the minute I heard that story, I called my business manager to say, are we okay? Because and I think a lot of business owners, a lot of celebrities, actors, entertainers, small business owners, big business owners, you better be calling your business people, your accountant, your bookkeeper, if you got them, and say, are we okay? Because that could be the key of ending up behind bars if you're in California, or not ending up behind bars.
Yeah. I think it's
Because
a really good way to distinguish responsibility here is when you sign your tax return, you are acknowledging that it is accurate and correct. And a lot of times your tax preparer or your professional who prepared it isn't going to be the one charged with these offenses. It's going to be the person who signed their name on the tax return. So very
Yeah.
important that you verify and you look at them.
yeah, you can't use you can't use the excuses that I thought my taxes were being done by my accountant or my business manager. That's not an excuse. So if anything, if you think you haven't filed, and there's a lot of you that are watching this, you know you haven't filed. You need to file. You need to contact us. Contact us. Have that conversation before you start the filing process, because there is a specific way of doing that. So with that, I'm going to wrap this show up. Andrew, good to see you. And I actually have an IRS agent I got to jump on the phone with. I'll talk to you guys later.
Sounds good. Bye.
Carlos, how can I help you? How you doing?